Today's guest, Daniel Hanlon. Hi, Dan. So nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Liz. Great to speak again.
Yeah, of course. Today's topic is actually, I think, a very special one because it's something that I have experienced as well. And I'm really excited about it. So we will be talking about going from an agency recruiter or like from the agency recruitment world into the internal talent world. And yeah, first of all, I would love to know why this is an important topic for you.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, definitely one that I'm very excited to speak about today. I think it's such an important topic for me because I feel like it's been key or one of the key elements of why I've been able to experience success in my current role. Also, when I was in agency, there was almost this kind of worry about moving in house because it was looked at like, oh, mate, if you can't hack agency recruitment, then you move in house. And I think definitely over the last kind of couple of years or so, there's been a significant change in the market in that. So I really want to help show people that maybe are in agency or have agency experience just how much they can use that to really help them, be the best that they can be in their roles.
Yeah, totally. So would you say is like the difference between an agency recruiter and an internal recruiter?
Yeah, really good question. Well, at the basic level for agency, you're working with a number of different clients to be able to fill, a number of different roles unless you're a specialist in a specific area. With internal recruitment, you're working for one business and you might even become more broad in terms of the roles that you recruit for, or perhaps even more specialized. It depends on the size of the talent acquisition function that you would be going into and the size of the company as well. But um, you in agency, you build strong relationships with your clients and you will, hopefully work with them a number of times, but you're not actually in the business. Whereas internally, you're recruiting for people that you're going to be working with, or at least next to on a daily basis and kind of building the company from the inside out.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Like I, I, and this is maybe my narrative, right? But I do feel like if you start off as an agency recruiter, once you've done that, you can work pretty much in any kind of environment, right? When it comes to talent. And I think this is like a stigma that's not just my opinion, but it really comes like from the experience itself, but then also, I guess, from the pace, right? And I'm not saying there is no pressure, there is no, no fast pace in internal recruitment. But what's your take on the difference when it comes to KPIs or just the pressure generally?
Yeah. And I think, a lot of things are the pressures that you put on yourselves. If you're in agency recruitment or have come from that, you're typically going to be quite ambitious individual that likes to exceed targets because you've always had targets put in front of you. And I think that vice versa, the pressures are very different because you think about the KPIs that you have in agency hiring. It's going to be a lot about how many people are getting to meet with the clients, how many people that you're placing, and the revenue that you're bringing in from that. I knew my quarterly target, and I had a rough idea of how much I cost the business each year. So you kind of know what you need to do to keep yourself in that seat and to be able to overperform. Whereas on the internal side of things, it's not revenue focused. You might be bringing on people who will generate revenue for the business. So it's inherently more performance focused, where the best metric that you can have is that someone's going to have been there for a long time or continue to be at the company for a long time and be performing. The conversations that you have with a hiring manager where they say, oh yeah, so-and-so's getting on brilliantly, is inherently that money in the pocket that you would have in, or money in the business's pocket that you would have had in agency as well. So different targets, same pressures. I'm very lucky I don't get put under much pressure in either of the roles that I've had, but yeah, I'd say it's pretty much down to you on how much pressure you put on yourself, give or take the situation that you're in, obviously.
Yeah. And would you say the transformation from an agency recruiter to interim is easier or the other way around based on the difference?
Well, I can only, I guess, comment from going agency to internal recruiter. Um, but I would say I think it would be, if I was to forget all my agency experience and then go into an agency, I think the foundations that I learned in agency have made it a lot easier to transition into an internal recruitment role. Um, the other way around may be slightly more difficult because of the even faster paced nature of the, agency recruitment, where you're having to learn a number of different clients' needs at all times and be able to inherently sell that to candidates in a great way so that they're invested in it. And you have to know a lot of different roles in quite a lot of detail in itself. And I think doing it the other way around, where you know all of that, to then come into internal recruitment where you've only got one company that you need to learn the sell for, and inherently, if you're enjoying yourself there, the sell comes naturally because it's the place that you're working and you want it to be the place where other people want to work as well. um, and then you learn the roles, so there's half as much in terms of role versus company split to learn in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I transitioned from, obviously we like the environment I'm working in right now is I'm going into internal companies, but I'm, from a third party provider. So
Hmm.
I go and stay there for a couple of months and then change again. So I have been an interim recruiter for 2 years now, but in different environments. And
Yeah.
what I do pick up is from the experience in different environments as well, that the biggest advantage I think I had with transitioning to that and the experience as an agency recruiter was volume hiring. I think it really does help to pick up the pace and, provide the numbers in a short period of time on a higher volume,
Hmm.
sorry. Uh, but then also at the same time, I think quality wise, and this is obviously not something that I'm generalizing here now, but I do think quality wise, when you go into an internal role, the quality of the work you do is so different from a relationship perspective, right? Because you build different type of relationships because those are long term.
Hmm.
And then also the pre-work to get to a new role or an opening and everything around it is way more thought through than I would say in an agency world, because again there is very fast paced. You get the details that you get. Sometimes you get the job descriptions from the client, sometimes you have to create them yourself. So it's way more different. What's your take on those kind of differences in terms of the different types of hiring, whether that's volume or qualitative kind of hiring.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the main differences we always talk about here is the fact of in agency, you can be working on a number of different roles. If you've got 5 or 6 roles on, you realistically know, okay, I've got my top three that I will, almost definitely fill, and I can focus on those. And the others, I can, hopefully find a candidate for. But then if I don't, somebody else is going to fill that role and it will go. In internal recruitment, nobody else takes that role off your hands. The only way that role is going is if the business decides to put it on pause, or you fill it internally. So I'd say, that is where as you say, the quality and relationship building piece really comes in, because you can, go through tough times with hiring managers where it's just a tough market out there and you can't find the right person. I've recruited for roles that have taken 6 to 9 months to recruit for, and they're always an urgent business need. And, I'm doing all I can to try and find that person. The hiring manager is doing all they can to help me find that person. But when you form that great, high quality relationship with that hiring manager, it is a team effort and you're able to work together to do that. So, I think volume could be the same across agency and internal hiring. But as you say, it is very much different in terms of the process of how you get there, the thinking that goes behind it before the role goes live, and the resources you have to utilize to find that right person as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting, right? Like it, I remember when I first got into the agency world, obviously you didn't like, I didn't know anything else. So to me, this was, the way of working was so normal, right? Like numbers driven, delivering the KPIs, or hitting the KPIs or the numbers. And then it would go from month to month, and you would always like review the whole month. And, like the way of working was completely different. Then when I like moved into internal recruitment, I felt like everything was a bit slower. And then we, it took way more time to define the role or define the profile. And it went into more almost like a consultative side as well. Obviously, you also do that in an agency, and ideally you would, consult your client and help and make sure that, you find the right profile. But I feel like you have way more input. Well, ideally, you would have way more input in an internal world. How is your experience been with that? Do you feel that is the truth, that you also have way more say in
Yeah.
hiring, right? Do you feel the same?
Yeah, 100%. And I completely agree with you. I think the best agency recruiters, they're called recruitment consultants for a reason. People just forget the consultant bit. You are actually there to help advise, because you should have some expertise in that industry to be able to help the client find that person or adjust what they need to be able to find the person that's going to be able to do the job for them.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think, in-house, you're in those conversations right from the briefing call right through to, the hopefully the role being filled in itself and everywhere in between. So the best internal recruiters are also, I like to call it a thought partner with the hiring manager. They're able to kind of be on a equal footing with them and say, okay, well, I know this is the exact profile that we're looking for, but I've actually spoken to this candidate who I think ticks a lot of different boxes to what you're looking for. And I really think it's worth you seeing them. And, you build great trust with that. You build a great feedback loop, and it allows you to be able to kind of be vulnerable in a way of like, I'm putting myself on the line for a candidate that, you might not have seen if it's not for me saying you should see this person. And even if it doesn't go as well as you would hope, you learn together as a kind of hiring group. And that's what I think is really key, and does help, and is maybe different to the agency side, to help you be able to fill more roles with more high quality candidates internally.
Yeah, totally agree. So, what would you say are the biggest challenges then from going into an agency recruiter into the intern world?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, touching back on what I said earlier around the roles don't go away, it,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to kind of let roles go away in agency either. But, I would challenge any agency recruiter to say whether they had, done that exact same thing.
Oh, I've
The,
done that, of course. Especially
exact.
team growth as well, right? Like there is so much happening, and it's so easy. Like I used to have a team. Sorry, I'm cutting you off here now, but
Right. Yes.
and when we were growing, which happened obviously quite often or like quick as well, that you would then start sharing roles, and if there's someone who has an expertise, it's very easy to then just be like, okay, you can take on this one, and I do this or whatever. So I think that's, I mean, whoever says and the opposite, I think
Yeah,
would not be so close to the truth here.
I agree. And I would probably argue they don't have enough roles on for that to be, if that is the case. But I think what you end up having internally as a challenge is the fact that this role is going to be, and it needs to be filled. And you can feel almost like you're banging your head against a wall, even with the best hiring managers in the world, because sometimes luck is not on your side. We all know luck is involved in recruitment. You could be in a very candidate driven market, which, is also working against you. But I think, I don't know, I try and be as optimistic as possible. I always think this role is going to be filled. It's it's not going to be here forever. We're not going to be talking in 2 years' time about this role that's been going on for 3 years. It will get filled. You just have to bear with the process and make sure you're doing all of the right things to be able to overcome that challenge.
So what would be the top 3 tips that you could give someone if a hiring position or like position hiring doesn't go too well?
Yeah, I would say the first and most important thing would be to look at the process in itself. Look at internally at yourself as a talent acquisition manager in terms of who you've been speaking to and the stats that are going along with that process. So we have started to track a lot of our recruitment funnel. So how many people are coming through in terms of applications or sourcing, how many people are getting through to a screening stage with me and then going through to a first stage with a hiring manager. And if I'm seeing a lot of discrepancy with loads of people, me sending loads of people to first stage with the hiring manager and them not getting through to the next case stage, for instance, then there's something there that could be me misunderstanding the brief and not sending through the right person, or me not understanding the person that we actually need, or the hiring manager maybe their role requirements don't quite meet the needs of the people that are actually out there in the market. So definitely first and foremost, look internally and then have a conversation with the hiring manager. They're going through that process with you. They are speaking to everyone that you've been speaking to and, understand from them what they're seeing and why we don't feel like we found the right person. I've had processes where there's been good people that have gone through, but haven't quite made it the whole way through the process. And I've had a chat with the hiring manager and they say, well, look, we have the luxury in this case where we're not really settling for this person being 80% right. They need to be 99% right.
Mhm.
And, that can kind of ease things for you. It does make it harder to find that person, but also you can be assured that you're finding the quality candidates, but it's just going to take that little bit extra to get the right person through.
Yeah.
And then finally, I guess the last point would be don't wait for this to happen. As soon as a role comes on, you'll kind of know what your hard to fill roles are. And I think you should even do this with your easier roles to fill because they can always turn into hard roles if market changes or, things with the company change. So get ahead of it and really, I have weekly catch ups with my hiring managers, and some weeks the catch up is there's nothing new to update you on. We know where we're at. Let's keep going from there. But having those constant check ins, both in terms of the numbers that you're hitting and also just a status update, ensures that you're ahead of any hardships. And when they do come up, you've got that open line of communication with a hiring manager to be able to tackle that very quickly.
Yeah. If I may add a couple of things as well, I think I have that also where I have roles. Actually, I think the most challenging roles I had really in since I'm in the internal world. And what I find what really helps is also starting the role by sourcing with the hiring managers together, like really taking an hour or so in the very beginning to take the time and also obviously consult and explain to the hiring managers that this is really useful, this 1 hour, and really go through profiles together so they see and get a feel for how the market is. And then also for you to kind of understand better what we're really looking for. Because honestly, I feel like 90% of the time, only when you start talking to people is when you and the hiring team really understands what they're actually looking for, right? Because sometimes you have an idea and you think, yeah, this and this and this is what I want. Obviously, unicorn, you know,
Yeah.
and all the perfect attributes and skills and experiences. And then obviously, you barely find those all in one person. So then it's really about okay, then kind of negotiating. Okay, what's really a must have and what's a nice to have. So I think those things really happen when you do spend like maybe an hour or so in the beginning to source together and go through the profiles and really, really get the feedback. It's really important to have this thorough feedback also from the hiring team. And then next thing is also, I think that the I call it frames of flexibility. So what do
Mm,
we put in our frame? What is really flexible? If we realize, hey, we need someone um, on site, but then are we flexible in terms of hours? Are we flexible in terms of I don't know, commute or the days, or those kind of things that are really important in the market? I think to really decide, okay, are we flexible with the salary? Are we flexible with the conditions for the role? And so on. I think that's very, very important as well. And what I also do find, um, what helps as well is, as you said, kind of reviewing the full process and really trying things out. I I don't think that one process for all roles is the right way of doing things. Sometimes, you need maybe more input from stakeholders when you want to fill a role. Sometimes you want to, I don't know, put a case study in, or sometimes you want to take one out. I think it's really about constantly reviewing the processes and the procedures you have, just to make sure that you really um, have the needs for the role and the profile that you're looking for, rather than generalizing everything, right? So yeah, I think if you have that, and also this is also something as an external recruiter that you should be able to provide or consult companies on, because it's such a different market now, I think, compared to how it was a couple of years ago, where it was a way more employer driven market, whereas
mhm.
in most sectors or kind of roles, I would say it's definitely a candidate driven market. So yeah, I think those are really the way forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like, just to add to that, having if you mentioned on the agency side, that's what you should be doing too, 100%. And on the internal side, knowing that you have the luxury to be able to do that is the important part. And I think that's where the agency experience really helps, is because obviously you want a lot of touch points with your client. You don't want to be annoying, but if they feel like you're working towards finding the right profile, and you're kind of keeping them updated on that journey, then and they're a part of that, then you're going to form that great relationship. And I really feel like that is something that I brought there from agency experience, gave me the confidence to be able to do that and implement it very quickly with my hiring managers in
Mm.
Attensi.
Yeah. You know what? In the very beginning, just at the end, I would like to add this as well. I always thought, when I was on the agency side, I sometimes wondered, like, obviously, I never knew the internal side. So I was like, it's interesting. Like, they have an internal team, but they still need so much support from an agency.
Yeah,
Being on the other side, I totally get why, because as an internal recruiter, you're so involved in so many stakeholder conversations, procedural things that need to be changed or discussed, or debriefs and all sorts, that sourcing sometimes is really tricky, and having the time. So I feel really the combination of both is like the best solution, especially when you have a lot going on, and you should really take on the consultation of an external recruiter as much as you as an internal recruiter can provide. So I feel that teamwork can
yeah,
can really make wonders. Like, I've seen it now being on both sides, what a difference it makes, which
yeah. And there's definitely a common misconception, at least from my perspective, that uh, internal recruiters hate agencies.
yeah.
Uh, I love when I get to work with an agency because you know, the reason why we're going to an agency is either that it's a specialist role that I've never recruited for, and don't have the current knowledge to be able to recruit for that. So I need support on it, or it's a resource thing. It's time. And as I said, the roles don't go away. So, they need to be filled, and there's no point putting the business in a tough spot out of pride. Um, and I always want agencies to fill the role as quickly as possible because it just gets it off your plate. And obviously, being on the other side of it, it's great for an agency too to be able to do that.
Totally, time is money, right?
Ex-
Oh yeah, totally with you. So then my last question would be, what's your top tip for someone who wants to go from an agency recruiter into an internal recruitment position?
Yeah. I would say treat your internal recruitment role like an agency role. And obviously there's a lot of things that you're going to have to adapt with that. You're not going to be recruiting for many different clients, but you can view your individual hiring managers as different clients themselves, because each of them is going to want different things, have different requirements, and be able to um, you have to work with them in a slightly different way. But also that ability to be able to really learn a company and sell a company and show your investment in that too. I think when you can talk to a potential candidate, or talk to a candidate about the company you're working with a lot of passion and excitement, it really is contagious, and it helps draw people into that company itself. So, don't be afraid to use your agency skills. If you've got great training, it's going to really help you. And the confidence that you've had from being that consultant and being able to really back a candidate that is slightly different, but could be a really good fit, that will be key when you're working with hiring managers as well. So, yeah, use your agency experience.
For sure. Totally agree. I think become a hybrid from
Yeah.
both. And it's funny that you say that actually with the client, because in the very beginning, I remember when I would say, like when I switched jobs, I would tell my husband, I'm like, oh, I have an meeting with my client. And he's like, huh? I thought we don't work with clients anymore. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I mean, the hiring managers. So it's funny that you say that. I just remembered I used to do that all the time, because it does take a difference. But you're absolutely right. I think you do have to, view it just with the same sensitivity of, this is my client, this is my stakeholder, this is who I'm dealing with. I
Yeah.
also see it from an HR perspective, right? I think for HR, your customers are the employees, right?
Hmm.
For us, it doesn't matter whether you work in an agency recruitment, in a recruitment agency, or if you work in an internal team, your customers are the hiring teams,
Yeah.
whether external or internal. So yeah, totally agree.
Great.
So much, Dan. It was lovely talking to you.
No
And
worries. Likewise.
yeah, all the best to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Liz.